Welcome, Dr. Penny. It's lovely to have you here. Let's start again. So I want to introduce Dr. Penny, everybody, before I pass over and let her welcome and introduce herself. So I've only recently connected with Dr. Penny, and it was via Scott Colby, who some of you may know from the Thrive Wellness Pet Summit at Cat Summit. And there are a load of people in there that I had never met or heard of. And you know me, I love to share and to give cats a voice. And to give cats a voice, that's not just my voice that speaks for them, it's other people as well. So I've had a lovely call with Penny, and we talked for far too long about far too many things, and we decided to do it live together. So I've got her here tonight to talk to you a little bit about her 7 pillars of longevity, but specifically for us this evening, we're going to look at nutrition. So let me just share with you about Dr. Penny Wood. So she's a longevity zoologist, animal health coach, and cognitive ethologist. I'm not sure if I've said that right. Is that right?
It is.
Okay. She specializes in regenerative and anti-aging medicine and captive animal mental health and well-being. And she's created, as I said, her 7 pillars of animal longevity to help your animals thrive. So welcome, Dr. Penny. You're here. Yay!
Thank you. First things first, I love how you're so like honoring of me, but I am Penny, Dr. Zoolittle. So I'm not a vet. So we need to be super clear. When I speak, I'm speaking as a zoologist, a scientist, animal welfare person, all that kind of thing, but not a vet. So not the Dr. Penny bit at the front there. Dr. Zoolittle is great for the company.
Okay, love it. Great. Thank you for the clarification. I love it. So is everything working technology-wise your end tonight? Are we good to go?
We're good.
Excellent. Okay, so let me just come into the chats and see if anybody's... Oh, they're mentioning Scott's presentation. Brilliant. So we'll cover some of the comments later. So I was just sharing with everybody. I'm sorry I sound a bit bunged up. I'm going through a bit of an energy shift. I'm hopeful that it will settle, but if I lose my voice when we get towards the end, you'll have to wrap us up, Penny. So let's just see how we go.
Don't worry, I've got many things I can share, so I'll fill that space, no problem.
Thank you. So I've asked you here tonight, and thank you for your time this evening. It's lovely to meet with someone who is in the UK. So we're both in the same time zone, yay, which is a huge thing to celebrate, because we both said that we do a lot of work with others that are out and around in the world. So I've asked you here tonight to talk about nutrition. Now, I speak very openly with my community that I know a bit. You know, my boys are fed a mixture of raw and wet food, and baby Max has a little bit of freeze-dried. You know, I know cats are carnivores. I know the dangers of dry with my previous cat Pickle, who ended up with diabetes, gingivitis, and a whole other thing. So I've got an experienced guardian's understanding of nutrition, but I know it's not something that I really talk a lot about because it's not my speciality. So I asked you here to talk about that and to share with us, you know, how nutrition, first question, how nutrition impacts our cats.
Okay.
Go.
So let's look at this. Let's make an analogy for 1 second and just say that a body, my body, my cat's body, your cat's body, right, is a factory. Let's just pretend it's a factory. Not my favorite analogy in terms of the aesthetic, but it actually serves the point really well to illustrate. Now, if this factory is going to be making what should we make? Christmas stockings. I don't know where that came from. But we've got to make something, right? So yeah, if we're going to make Christmas stockings, we're going to need to have some raw materials come in, because we're going to make it out of thin air. So we've got to make it out of something. So in comes the wool and the sparkly threads and the decorative pieces, right? And so that's the input. And then the factory itself does the production. It makes the things, it uses some energy and creates the end product. And out the other end goes these beautiful Christmas stockings. And then there's a little bit of a rubbish bin in the corner where the offcuts and the threads and the bits that didn't work so well and a bodgy one that was like, you know, not good enough to go. Right, so that's all in the bin. Think of the body the same way. Okay, so the stuff coming in is your nutrition primarily. There are other things too. Obviously, air is coming in. That's a pretty key component, right? Without air, we've only got about 3 minutes. So other things as well as nutrition are coming in. But nutrition's a really big part of what enters the body. And it's a part that the body says, yes, you have a passport to come in. You're fine, because it's natural. It's what the body needs. The body recognizes that the immune system doesn't have a big heart attack about that. What allergies is when your passport doesn't get stamped properly, and you're like, oh, you got stuck at the border. You were supposed to come in okay, but the border control said, but let's not digress too much. So food coming in is what the body wants, and it receives it well. Okay, so every day there's input coming in. That factory is not going to make very many Christmas stockings if input stops. Same with your body. It's not going to do a lot if your input stops. Okay, so here's the thing. When we use rubbishy input, we get problems in the production, right? Cheap, low quality. Now what we make as a Christmas stocking, it only lasts 1 year. The threads fall off, the decoration, like it's no good. Same with our body. If we bring in junk nutrition, then our cells do not get nourished. The production of how they use their energy to make things, to replicate, to copy the DNA faithfully, to actually produce energy for like ATP, which is the body's energy, right? We charge our phone battery, right? That we're making our own ATP. We're charging our own battery, yeah, right? Good analogy, right? So all of this stuff has to happen as part of the production line of the factory. Without that, so the food coming in is not just the raw materials, it's also powering your energy. It's also stocking up the battery, if you like, and a bunch more besides, because it's also now going to power up your security patrol, right? Your immune system is there to go, you don't come in. You're a foreign invader. You're a pathogen. So every single thing, I can't say that. Most things that the body's doing in terms of production relies on what comes in. So if we don't get food right, you can expect a whole lot of downstream problems all the way through the body, wherever you care to look, right? It just depends where this particular individual has their weakness. Okay, it's going to manifest there. It's going to show up there, become visible as a symptom there, where that particular individual's body has a weakness. So the same cause, bad nutrition, looks like 57 different things depending on the animal. So here's the good news. Good news is it's so easy to get it right. We don't need science degrees. We don't need nutrition qualifications. We don't need to spend 14 hours in the kitchen and batch produce our own things, whatever, right? You can, if you love all those stuff, rock on, right? But you don't need to. It can be really, really simple. And then what you're doing by switching or using high quality species appropriate nutrition, because a cat is not a dog. Their cat is not a dog. Cat is not a human, right? They eat different things, species appropriate nutrition. When you give species appropriate nutrition, according to the research in longevity, you're giving a minimum, or no, I should say minimum, you're giving an average. You're giving an average of 3.5 years, human years, of extra lifespan. So that's a pretty cheap ticket to a pretty big result. Now think about that. If you are a cat, you're around about going to go to 15. Like that is the average. Okay, I'm not saying that's right or good, or that is the average, 15. So if you're adding 3.5, that's more than a fifth extra. Okay, so what would that look like for us? That's probably something in the order of 15 years in our lifespan if we were doing equivalency. So 3.5 bites, also 15. Like who wouldn't take 15 more years? And not just years of, oh, I'm alive, but I'm in a hospital bed. No, we're talking about thriving, because that internal system machinery production, right, is all working really well because you're putting high quality in. So
and who doesn't want that with their cat? Like who doesn't want extra time with their cat, right? Like who doesn't want that?
Well, exactly. I didn't meet anybody who said, yeah, no, I don't care. I mean, they could just nick off next week and be fine with, no, no, we're saying our goodnight prayers going, dear Lord, give my cat 25 more years. You know, we're just like, we must, like, you must stay with me, right? No,
forever.
So here's a good way of doing it, right? So nutrition, to answer your question, is a really big deal, but it doesn't have to be a hindrance, doesn't have to be a brick wall that we have to overcome and struggle with. Like it's a super simple thing to tick off that list and go, okay, next, what else can I do? How can I pull another 3 years from somewhere, right? And the earlier you start, the more you gain. Okay, there's never a day that's too late to begin for your pets. There's never a day that's too late. Okay, but the earlier you start, the more you're going to gain. So that 3.5 whatever average is sort of the big old average. But if you're, you know, a 1-year-old just out of kitten pants, right, and you're growing into being, I'm going to wear my cat pants now, right? So you've got maybe 6 years to gain, right, from the average. So instead of 15, you're now going to be 21, and it could be more than that. I'm just not going to hear like tell you what it's going to be because I can't, but I can tell you it works. The science is irrevocable. Like it's just so decided. Like,
it's just so clear, isn't it? It's so obvious. It's so real. I mean, think about ourselves when we talk about the humans. You know, I try to help people understand about their cats by giving them likeness with humans. You know, when we think about what we put into our bodies, you know, when we have a diet that's, you know, perhaps junk food heavy, we feel sluggish, and you know, there are symptoms, like you said, there are side effects of what we put into our body and how well that moves and functions, and like you said, does all the things it needs to do. And it is exactly the same for our little fur babies as well. And I just want to be clear with everybody, like, I'm loving in the comments seeing people feeding raw and looking to get education and information from tonight. And I also want to say, like, this isn't a session to say, you know, raw is the only way. Like, I'm a firm believer of raw food, and I've also had cats that have refused to have it. And also with Pickle, you know, when we put her onto raw, she had actually, you know, she had health issues. Do you know what I mean? So she ended up with half raw, half wet. So as much as Penny and I, in fact, I'm not going to speak for you because that's not fair. I know that you've worked with big cats and seen, I'm sure, what they eat. You know, cats are carnivores, but this session isn't about shaming or blaming anybody that it isn't feeding raw food. It's not a session to say, like, it's the only way, because it's not, because every cat is an individual. Every cat is unique. So just like us humans, there are some people that eat just raw fruits and vegetables, and that works brilliantly for them. There are others that wouldn't work so well for. So just take away from today, what we're going to talk about when we look at the plate in a minute, is that, you know, what changes can you make? What small changes can you bring in? Like Penny said, it's not about going from doing a pendulum swing from one type of food to another. All of a sudden you've got this extra time with your cat. I wish that was the way it worked, but it's not. But what we can do is look at how can we improve what we're doing to give our cats the best chance, like Penny said, of having that extra time. So can you talk a little bit? So thank you for sharing what you have. I think it's great to start with understanding just how crucial and pivotal nutrition is for our cat's health and well-being. So could you talk a little bit about the plate? You know, so what is it that we need to be considering when it comes to, you know, when we're feeding our cats?
Okay, great. I love you call it a plate as well rather than a bowl, because that's a key point. But let me come back to that. I divide nutrition because it's a really big topic. Okay, I divide nutrition into 4 steps. And so the basic bowl, or the basic plate in the case for cats, is step number 1. So that's what we're going to unpack in a second. But just let me give you a quick overview of the other 3 components, because they're critically important too if you're going to do what I call gold standard, right? I always pitch for gold standard. If we can't go to that way for whatever reason, fine, but at least you're now aware of the benchmark to sort of be aiming at. And then we can get creative as to how to get you as close as possible according to circumstances, right? So the benchmark is gold standard 4 steps. So basic bowl. Then we have supplementation. And unfortunately, we now are in a world where supplementation is really not negotiable if you are going for gold standard. Okay. And I say that because we know from industrial farming that our soils have been depleted and poisoned, so that they're no longer those same living soils, those rich soils that we used to have, which means that the entire food chain, plant, animal, and apex predator, all right, are deficient because our soil is deficient. So until we solve the soil problem, supplementation is not negotiable for a gold standard. So I've taken the 42 daily essential nutrients of what a cat needs to have. So daily means daily, essential means they can't produce it themselves. It has to come from the outside in. Okay, so daily essential nutrients for a cat, there are 42. Don't worry, you don't have to learn them. It doesn't get complicated. But there are 4 supplements that I recommend that cover your bases in those 4 in those 42. Okay, the 42, just for a very quick breakdown, are amino acids, essential fatty acids, so omega-3s, vitamins and minerals. Okay, so it's not rocket science. This is stuff you're familiar with, and that together there's 42 of those. So if you can take a supplement 1, 2, 3, 4 that covers each of those 4 things, you've just done supplementation in the simplest possible way. So I've gone ahead and figured out that for you, researched, found the best products, and so I recommend them. Again, my gold standard. You don't have to go there, but if you want the problem solved and you've got the means to do it, Great, that's that box then ticked. See, I told you it was really easy. Okay. Then number 3, longevity toppers. Okay, so this is where we can get more creative and have a bit more fun. We can play around in the kitchen. So we can put an egg on it one day, and we can put a sardine on it the next day, and we can put some spirulina, right? So we're talking about superfoods. We're talking about nutritionally dense, really palatable treat type of foods and flavors and textures that make the basic plate more interesting than if it's always the same plate every day. And I know that our primary proteins are going to change and so on, that's fantastic. But even so, just think about the pleasure of eating. The pleasure of eating applies to animals too. There are countless studies, and we've all seen it, right? You rustle anything food related, they've got their attention. If they were not interested, if it was not pleasurable, you would not get their attention, right? You know, you rustle something else, pick up a newspaper, I don't know, whatever, but you do something and they're like, whatever, white noise, don't care, right? Because there's no emotional attachment. There's a huge emotion. So the more that we can make food delicious and a treat and an experience. So I love toppers, and so that goes there because it's pleasure for the animals, so that's welfare for them, but you're also expanding out, right? Expanding out their nutrition profile, okay? Because we're diversifying, we're allowing balance over time, which is the key to success in this, right? Did you ever in your whole life, because I didn't, right? Ever in your whole life, sit down and go, what are the daily essential nutrients for a human? And then tick them off, go, okay, well, today I'm going to eat this on the menu. That has 0.32 micrograms of selenium and 14 grams of zinc. No, nobody does that. Right? It takes all the fun out. So you're not going to do that for your cat either. But balance over time means that you can be pulling these nutrients into your cat's body through the longevity superfoods that then get stored away in the body to be used later. Okay, so when they say, oh, we're a little bit low on selenium, oh, don't worry, we've got some in the storage cupboard over here, like we stored some in these cells, right? So this is, anyway, so that's your longevity superfoods. That's number 3. And then number 4, everybody forgets water.
Oh, yes.
Water is a nutrient. It's essential. After air, it's the second most important thing that we bring into our body. Okay, 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. That's the general, right? So number 2 on the list of I must have it, right? So if we don't optimize their water, particularly because cats are not naturally brilliant at free drinking, right? So we need to sometimes like trick them, right? It's like trying to get your broccoli into your kids. So you've got to do some snazzy things to trick them into getting it in. We have to sometimes do that with our water because our cats are so very prone to the chronic kidney disease and other kidney issues, right? And we want to protect them from that. This is not a genetic disease. Okay, this is not normal, like your vets will tell you. It is not, oh, well, we expect your cat. No, that is all nonsense, right? You can protect your cats from this, but we must address pillar number 4 inside nutrition, which is water. Okay, so really long answer that was all prefaced to actually talking about the basic plate. Okay, so nutrition for me just ended up being this group of 4s. Okay, so we just did those 4 components. There were 4 inside the daily essential nutrients, and there's actually 4 inside the bowl as well. Okay, I'm going to keep calling it a bowl because I'm used to talking with dog people, but plate. Okay. So, first things first, a cat is an obligate carnivore. Yes. Obligate carnivore means that it is not negotiable, even forget my gold standard thing, it is not negotiable for the cat's biology to have things other than animal protein. Okay, bottom line, I didn't make the rules, the biology is there and the science is unequivocal. So, they absolutely must be eating meat. Okay, now when we think of meat, we think of a chicken breast and we think of a steak and this kind of stuff. Okay, this is muscle meat. We eat muscle meat. It's our standard and our normal thing. Okay, so that is one of the 4 types of meat, but there are 3 others as well. And so for a cat, we want all 4. We want 50% of that bowl, that plate, to be muscle meat. Okay, but we also want 20% of that plate to be organ meat. Now, you would have heard of organ meat before. You guys are all 2.0 pet parents. You know about heart, liver, spleen, kidneys, all right. So that's your organ meat, and you can do that as fresh. You can do that as dried. You can do that as freeze dried. You can do that as sprinkles. There's lots of different ways you can do your organ meats, but about 20% of the bowl wants to be organs, okay, and then about 15% of the bowl wants to be bone. Okay, now you can use bone ground up, you can use raw meaty bones that they eat like a chicken neck, or you can use eggshell powder that's ground up with the membrane, right? So there are alternatives depending on what your cat's mineral needs are. For example, if they've got various health conditions already, you might want to be steering away from excess bone, in which case eggshell is your go-to there. But typically speaking, you're going to want that. And if you can give them as those raw meaty bones, the way we would do for a dog, but scaled down and safe for the cat's mouth, even better than the powdered, okay? Because now not only are you getting that nutritional quality of those minerals, but you're also getting things like bone marrow and the connective tissues and things that wrap around it, which we're going to get to in a second, but you're also using it as a toothbrush. Okay, this is nature's toothbrush, and the gnarlier, the better. The more knobbly and weird shaped and bumpy and difficult to work with, the better. Because now the cat's got to use her whole mouth to kind of go, right? And so they're brushing and cleaning the hard to reach places in their mouth and doing their teeth much better than if they just had a rib bone, right? Which can be, kind of just done with their little nothing teeth at the front, right? So we want them to be working with their jaws properly on that. So raw meaty bones. And then number 4 is the connective tissue and the collagen, okay? So ligaments, tendons, the sinews, gristle, cartilage, skin, fur and feathers, okay? It all sounds really grim, but that's what they do. They eat it in the wild. They need it for their bodies. There was an amazing study, in-depth nutritional profile of research being done by Dr. Adrian Tordef, who is a South African researcher, zoologist, and he was working with cheetah conservation. Okay, so cheetahs went through this genetic bottleneck. They've got very little genetic diversity. They're a hard species to look after properly because they have a lot of inherent weaknesses now from that genetic crush. So there's a lot of conservation work that's being done with them, but we kept seeing this same thing, chronic kidney disease, cropping up in the cheetahs. And they were like, we've got to do something about this. This is this is an endangered species. We must protect. So they did this research study. What was driving it? Because the wild cheetahs weren't getting it. Okay, and this is one of the reasons why I know for sure that this is not a genetic disease. Because if anyone was going to get it with their genetic problems, it was going to be a cheetah, but all the wild ones were fine. Wow. Okay, the captive ones, however, were coming down with it. Why? It was the way we were looking after it. That was apparent. But what is it that we were getting right? What was it that we were getting wrong? Right, missing. And so therefore neglecting to do. And it turns out that the big part of the equation is collagen. It's water and collagen. There's a little few other bits and pieces, water and collagen. This is why I add water as the non-negotiable in nutrition, okay? But the collagen was the big missing piece because typically in the captive environment, we're not giving it. And yet you look at a mouse,
they eat it.
Rabbit, and you look at a zebra, doesn't matter what cat you are, right? There's a food size for you. What is the mouse, rabbit, zebra body composition? 50% muscle meat, 20% organ, 15% bone, and 15% collagen. Wow. This is how we know these are the right numbers for what a cat should be eating, because every wild animal that they go and catch has that composition of the body. Yeah. So does your cat, by the way. Bodies have that basic ratio as their composition. So that is a balanced meal. So we're just taking what nature put on the menu and making that same connection to their bowl, their plate, okay? And now that's the right food. And so when you think of a body, right, a dead body, right, is not a really, really old dead one that a dog might eat, but a nice fresh one that a cat's going to go for, right, is about 70% moisture. So we've got to get the water into their plate, because that's where they get it from. They don't go licking out of a pond, because they're, typically speaking, they're ancestrally, right, they're a desert species. So desert species conserve their water. Their physiology works differently. They're able to extract their moisture from the body fluids of their prey. So we've got to give them the water the way that they're going to be comfortable. Now, they love their moving water. Okay,
let me just pause you there. Like, Penny, let me just pause you on water a second, because we're going to go, because I love, I can sit and be like this with you and listen for hours, but I just want to pause you on water, because there's a couple of questions that I've got, and I'm sure others will have them too from what you've shared so far. Is that okay? And I will come back to water. Is that okay? So what happened with the cheetahs and the collagen? How did they support them with that? Because I'm sure that there are some of us as cat guardians going, do you know what? I've reached early 40s, and my sister's all about, oh, we've got to start having collagen as supplements, and right, great, lovely, and I'd never even thought of collagen for cats. So can you just talk a bit about how they dealt with that in the wild? Was it just a question of changing what was fed, or was it supplemented? That's okay.
So it was taking the lessons from the wild of the cheetah would go after an impala, like a kind of a deer thing. Like, if you don't know your wild animals, it's like, so the impala, right, has about 15-20% collagen in their body for all of those connective tissues. When in captivity, they were just feeding the muscle meat, because that's kind of, again, the human brain says, I'm going to look after you the way I look after me. Yeah. I eat muscle meat. If I'm going to give you meat, therefore I give you my meat, right? But we forget what a body's made of. As soon as they made the switch and went to carcass feeding, which is to say, here's a whole rabbit, right? Ears and fur and the bunny tail and everything. Like, here's a whole one. Cheetah go crazy with that. The cheetahs did go crazy with that. They loved it. And whew, we got rid of that disease. Wow. Because we're putting the collagen. So we don't have to do carcass feeding at home. Don't worry, people who are not zookeepers, right? So you can do supplementation, or you can get from the butchers or wherever you buy your stuff, right? Chicken necks. Half of a chicken neck is collagen, because there's all of the discs in there, and there's all the things, right? So you can do it in a way that is a little bit more sanitized than there you go.
Dead body.
Yeah. I mean, if you've got any hunters in the family, I'm talking about furry 4 feet hunters, right? If you've got a natural cat pound hunter, right, who's going to go and catch their own mice, then they're going to get some inside their mouse, right? Now, if they're inside babies and they're not going to go do that, then you need to be supplementing them, or you need to be buying a food that already has that included as one of their ingredients. Okay, so there are sanitized ways where you don't have to get your hands dirty. Buy a food brand that has that balance in their food, right? Or go for the chicken necks, where you can get their teeth nice and clean as a positive side effect. Yeah. Or you can go for those powders and things. So you can get, so there are bovine ones and fish ones, typically speaking, because collagen is one of those things. The collagen is the number one protein that we find in a body. Okay, there's a lot of proteins that make up our body. Collagen is actually the number one. There's nothing more than collagen. So it's really, but there are something like 36 different types of collagen, and they do work differently and make different types of tissues. And so it's not just like, oh, collagen, there it is, right?
Yeah.
So they get Roman numerals, just a collagen 101. So they've got a Roman numeral 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 look like this, and 10 looks like that, right? You know what you wrote, right? So when you're buying collagen, you want to try and get a spread rather than just type 2, for example, right? There are some that are more common than others. Don't stress that we don't need to try and tick a box and go back to that list and go collagen number 1, collagen number 2, right? Don't get hung up on it, right? But some spread of collagen. So if you're picking a supplement that you're going to add a powder, look for one that's got at least 4 or 5 types in there. Okay, most of them are constant. Like, the vast majority of what they need is in about 4 or 5 types. Like, you don't need to have 83. So, but the more closely aligned to the natural source is always going to be better.
Absolutely.
So if you buy anything from the butcher's shop, and and sometimes you can do special orders and say, hey, could I have one of the whatever with the fur on still, please?
Yeah.
Could I have these with could I have the fish with the scales on still, please, right? And don't be grimmed out that your cat is going to go and eat that, because that's what they're supposed to do, and that's making them healthy and protecting them from chronic kidney disease.
I think that's one of the things, isn't it? It's about the difference between us as humans and what we perceive as, nice and normal versus like our cats. And actually our cats are carnivores, they're predators, and when baby Max, because Leo doesn't do it so much anymore, but when baby Max comes home and he's got a kill, he hopefully follows the rule of dead through the door or not at all, because chasing mice around my house, trying to capture the mini birds and things is not my idea of fun. So he hopefully, 80% of the time adheres to that rule. But I watch him with it, and there is a bit of me that's grossed out, and I feel sad, for the being, the little mouse or the bird. And then there's a part of me that is joy, and I find it incredibly interesting that I can feel sadness and joy literally in the same moment. But when I watch him, and he eats, a lot of the time he just eats the heads of the mice, and other times if he brings a little bird, which is more rare, he will eat the whole thing apart from the intestines. He does that with both of them. He always leaves the intestines, which I find fascinating, bearing in mind he's got no knife and fork, he's got no paw, he's not like pushing it to one side, he's only got his mouth and chewing on it. And yet I come down, there's this little stomach and line of intestines. I just find that fascinating. Anyway, I digress. It is interesting when we see them and let them have the capacity to do it in a more natural way. Like you said, this isn't the list about having a list and ticking off all the supplements that we give them because they don't have access to outside. First of all, we need to understand if they are deficient or whether we need to be adding those things and supporting them in that way. But the best way to give them mental stimulation and emotional health is to give them those tools, like you said, to mimic the natural behaviors for them. So giving them the opportunity to engage with something that we may think is gross, they may actually have the time of their lives with it. I never forget when we first had baby Max, and unfortunately there was a small dead bird in the garden, and I took it into where he was and broke the skin so that he could see, and smell the insides and things, to let him be curious with it. And even if you've got older cats, peeps, and they are indoors, stretch yourself out of your comfort zone and see how you can be expansive in your connection with your cat by giving them what they need and meeting their needs, because it's not all about our needs. We're asking this sentient being, this other species, we are asking a different species to come and live with us. We can, like Penny said, we've got the gold standard of needs, and we can do the best that we can to help them meet them. So if people take anything away from tonight, maybe have a think about how you can stretch yourself and how you can push yourself out of your comfort zone to meet one of your cat's needs by doing something a bit more natural and giving them the option to engage in maybe a behavior or a drive they've not used for a while, but will still be there regardless,
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I call the work that I do with pets rewilding animal health and happiness. Yes. Because what we've typically done by love, right, yes, but it's sometimes a bit misguided, is that we have attempted to domesticate their body, right, rather than treating their body the way that it actually is, which is still wild. It is still a different species. It is still going to be operating differently from ours. Now, listen, life has the same underlying principles, right? Even plants, there are some underlying principles that are in common with life form, right? But just about every mammal, right, has this rock solid foundation of how the body works, okay? So there are those things, but what we do then is make it species specific. So I'm going to look after a dolphin differently from the way I'm going to look after a snow leopard. And I'm going to look after a honey badger differently from a tree kangaroo, right? Because they're species specific and they've got different needs, they live in different environment. There's a whole, right? You understand that. So we need to respect that that's what we've done with a pet, right? Is brought in another species who is domesticated up here, right? Their brain has changed from the wild animal version, but their body is still the same. And what we've done by default, by whatever, is try to domesticate the body by giving it artificial for its requirements resources. Okay, so we already know that highly processed food for us is not healthy food, but we've done highly processed food for pets because it was convenient, and we forgot to look at the science to say, what does your body require? And their body requires the same thing as a wild cat, big or small, right? So rewilding, bringing back the ability for the animals to behave and to operate internally in their wild sense, still with their domesticated brain of identity and family and belonging. We're not going to change that. We're not going to turn them into feral cats, right? That's not, we couldn't even, but we're looking at saying, how do I preserve your body so that you can stay with me for longer, so that you can be protected from diseases and suffering, so that your life has really high value to you. You're thriving, not just surviving, right? That's my responsibility as the kind of grown-up in the piece, right, as the decision maker, right? To the decision maker goes the responsibility. So we have to not abdicate that to some outside messaging that has an agenda that says, buy my product that's really rubbish because it puts money in my pocket and makes your life easy. We need to be go, hang on a minute. My priority number one is my family's welfare. So let me take some science with what you're saying here and see how that goes, and then I'll make a decision, right? So if you want to go down that pathway, rock on, I'll support you, right? But I've already done it for you, right? So if you don't want to do the work, that's fine. We can just chat and I'll go, here you go, this is what I do, you know, cut to the chase. But I looked at where does marketing and the normal thing not align, right, with the science. Okay, and it goes like that, and you're like, well, hang on a minute. It doesn't work.
Yeah. Right? Nope.
So let's something that goes, oh, perfect. Let's do that.
Yeah. Love it. Thank you. So I can't believe it's like 40 minutes gone already. The time just seems to whiz by. So we've talked a bit about, remind me, the 4 components: vitamins, minerals, amino acids, and
essential fatty acids.
That was it.
So omega-3.
Yep. Okay, lovely.
There are 6s which typically don't need to ever be supplemented. We're usually well in excess over that, right? Okay. There's also omega-7, 9, and 15. 15 has only recently been discovered thanks to some research in dolphins, because they were trying to figure out why don't dolphins get cancer, and they did some things and they went, there's a molecule inside a dolphin that looks like this, blah, blah, what is that? And they're like, if I'm not mistaken, that's an omega oil. And then they did some other things and like, yeah, it is an omega. It's omega-15. Check this out. We've got a brand new thing, right? So there's more than just 3, but let's just keep it simple and go omega-3, because we've got to bring that 6:3 ratio back to where it's supposed to be. And so far, there's a global study that's being done at the moment. I'm participating in helping funnel in people to be part of it, right, to understand just how bad the omega-6/3 problem is. We have not yet found an animal tested, right? Obviously, there are animals who haven't been tested, right? But we're in the thousands and thousands of animals globally. There's not one animal that has been tested that has come back in balance.
Wow.
Even the ones that are taking fish oil supplements.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is and when you consider that omega-3, first of all, it's one of your daily essential nutrients. You can't make it yourself. You must get it into your body. Okay, so there's that, but it affects every single cell in the body. Okay, like water does something to every cell. So water, like I said, you fix your water and you've gone a long way to fixing a lot of problems, because it affects every single part. Omega-3 is the same. Okay, it's different, obviously, but it affects every single. So you get so much bang for your buck by bringing omega-3s into the equation properly. And the problem with oils is they're like silk. Fine silk, very expensive, very luxurious, very easily damaged. So when we go and bulk buy in some oil and it's in a plastic container and it was in the factory for this long and it was in the sun and it's ruined. You're just giving, you're probably doing more harm than good, the truth be told. Okay.
What natural options would you recommend for omegas for cats?
Sardines are one of the best. In terms of a whole food, a small fish, a small oily fish. The smaller the better, and I don't mean like, but I'm talking about ones that are at the bottom of the food chain. Okay. So omega-3s are made by phytoplankton, right? That's the bottom of the food chain, but cats typically don't go around eating that. You can buy some amazing supplement phytoplankton oil. Adored Beast has it. It's incredible. That's where it begins. And then a little fish eats it, and then a little bit of a bigger fish eats it, and then we go, or fish, right, until we get to until we get to salmon over here. The problem is that salmon have picked up a whole lot of environmental toxins along the way, whereas your little tiny fish haven't. Okay. So those are if you're looking for giving the whole food, little oily fish is the best. But really, the gold standard, again, right, would be the actual oil itself that you could buy as a supplement. Now, it's not often that I'll take a supplement that's produced, had something done to it over the actual like natural food. But this is probably the one exception where I do, just because of the concentrations then, because, again, not even one animal, right? And they've tested cats, dogs, horses, and a few other exotics, but mostly dogs and horses, but even, none of them are hitting it, even the ones. So it's a big deal.
It's fascinating. Thank you for that. So let's go back to water. We'll do about 10 minutes more, and then we'll see if anybody's got any questions. So talk to us about water and why that is so important and how we can help our cats with it.
Okay, water is literally the fountain of youth, okay? In case you were wondering, yes, it does exist, and yes, it's water. So don't get bored and sad by that. Just know that it's that easy. So there's no reason why you and your pets can't benefit from it massively. So when we're born, like baby humans, baby animals, about 90% of their body is water, okay? So the younger you are, typically, the higher water content you have in your body. When somebody is dying, so when someone is in very late stage diseases and dying, okay, doctors have said that we're about 50% water. Okay, so 90 at birth and 50, so we can see that there's a direct correlation between water content in the body and health or not health. Okay, so if we can strive to be pushing up by making sure that we're hydrating all the time, right, then we're going to be staying at the healthy end by default. Okay, so water is used by every cell in the body. It's there to nourish, to flush, it does a whole lot of things. It's carrying oxygen, which we absolutely need. Okay, so the hydrogen in the water is a great antioxidant. The oxygen is the stuff of life. You put the two together, you're going to be alive. So the more water you can drink, the more you're going to be alive. And I mean that in terms of energy, in terms of health, in terms of actually physically being alive. So the same applies for our cats. When we look at their natural behavior, as I said, they're not classically talented free drinkers, right? There's always an outlier who is, and someone's like, oh, yeah, my cat always, all right, oh, great, fantastic. I'm really pleased for you because it makes life easy. But typically speaking, we have to be mindful to get enough water in their bodies, okay? So I don't ever feed a bowl without water going into it as well, okay? Now, I need to balance that carefully because, again, I want to keep my cats loving their dinner and getting all that hedonic pleasure out of it, right? I don't want to just give them watered down soup, right? However, right, even though they're getting raw food, which has got high moisture content in it, I'm playing against the odds and I'm going, well, you're going to have a bit extra. I'm pretty rough. Right. And in the summertime, when those temperatures start to increase, I get even sneakier. And I'm like, all right, you can have an extra bowl, right, which has got your water in it. And I'm going to put a splash of milk or a splash of kefir or a splash of bone broth or a splash of something that you really like to drink, right, and put in there. And that's going to entice you now to come and drink the whole bowl. Right? If I put a bowl of water down, they're not going to drink the whole bowl. But if I can flavor this and make it some kind of a smoothie or a soup or something that right, I've just tricked them into drinking the whole thing. Their moisture content's gone sky high. So It's really easy to do this. The green milkshake, that's what we call it here, right? Is a simple one to do. So that is water plus some kind of milk or kefir, right? I mean, the kefir is great because you've got all the probiotics and stuff in there as well. If you don't happen to have some, then milk will do, because it's not going to be so rich in the lactose because you're not doing just that. Okay, so the tummy should be fine. Work with what works for your cats. My cats are bomb-proof when it comes to the milk, so it's fine. But I understand that there are differences, right? And then we use something like spirulina or chlorella or both, or moringa leaf, right? These are my 3 favorite green things in the world. And sprinkle that in and then stir that up, right? It's not very exciting at all, but I pretend to them that it's fabulous and it's a green milkshake and they love it. And now they're getting their superfoods, right? They're getting their probiotics. They're getting all of, I mean, moringa, spirulina, and chlorella. I mean, talk about powerhouse. Listen, you could, not a cat because they are the obligate carnivore, but as a human, you could just live on that. Because just about every single one of our essential daily nutrients is it, right? That's not the diet that I want to have, but anytime I feel like I'm dipping in energy, dipping in clarity, dipping in like, oh, my skin's not so great today, or I feel like I'm like, all right, just get a bit of that green in, right? It's rocket juice. So same for our pets. So water. So that's one thing that you can do to help get more in the bowl. Sorry, more in their body. Right, is to trick them into how delicious it really is. Moving water. They love moving water. It's fresh. Cats actually have taste buds on their tongue for water, right? 2 things that are different to us. 3 things. They can't taste sweet, okay? They do not have sweet receptors. Yes, I know they love sweet things. Mine go mental if I drop a bit of ice cream. They're all over it, right? But they actually can't taste sweet. They can, however, taste individual amino acids. So when we put out in our, we go meat, meat. Our tongue's not very sophisticated from that point of view. Whereas you give it to the cat and they're like, oh, a bit of arginine, a bit of valine, a bit of leucine, if I'm not mistaken. They're really quite the connoisseur, and they can identify the individual amino acids that make up the meat. And that's why sometimes they're picky. Right? We say they're picky because we look at them and go, just eat your dinner, right? But they're going, no, I don't need any more taurine or leucine or arginine. What I need is whatever. So I'm not going to eat that because I'm going into excess. Right now, I don't need that. I'm going to go into excess. If you give me another type of meat that has a different nutritional profile of the amino acids, I'll probably go for that, because that's the one I need, right? It's that balance over time thing. So if you have a picky cat, one of the best ways to loop around that is to actually offer them a greater frequency, a change in the protein, the primary protein that you're giving them, because they were probably maxed out on the nutritional profile of that particular one, and is saying, I don't want to go into excess in my body, so I'm going to just not have that, right? But you give something else, it fills that gap. So their tongues can taste the amino acids, but their tongues can also taste the water. Okay, so where a dog is like, I'll drink out of a swamp, right? A cat's like, no, I am your water sommelier. Now this one is this with a hint of that, and look at the nose on this one and the bouquet of this water, right? They can tell you that, and their water. So they're picky, right? Well, listen, when you chose a cat, you chose to have a royal family member, okay? They have refined tastes. And yes, they can do microsurgery with their mouth and just leave the little spleen and little intact, right? They're little precision artists. They're fine-tuned. They're Lamborghinis of the animal kingdom. That's what you chose. Live with it. But they will go with water when it's fresh, moving, mineral-rich, right? And then my favorite hacks with water are to go for oxygen water or hydrogen water. Both are amazing. They work differently. There's a structured water as well, which is another whole thing to unpack if you've never heard of that before. But let me take you to the other 2 for a second. So in my water glass sitting up here, I actually have oxygen water, right? You can't see very well because of dark glass, but it is still, right? This is not an effervescent water. However, this has got 70 times more oxygen in it than bottled water or tap water. Okay, they've done nano bubbles of oxygen in here. Nano bubbles are so small that they can't escape out of the water to disappear. But when I drink it, it's not only been proven to be in the water, proven to be in my bloodstream, but also proven to get that oxygen into the cells. The more oxygen that we have in our body, the more we are alive. Okay, now we all know that the air is not pure oxygen. The air is made up of nitrogen and some other gases, and oxygen's about 21%. However, before, like, go back in history, and you take air bubbles and things out of the ice cores and out of amber and these kinds of things where air bubbles have been preserved from centuries or wherever, how long ago, right? The composition of air was different. The composition of air was 36% oxygen. So, and this is at the same period of time where a bunch of animals are living, but they're the big animals, big bodies. They were able to grow bigger because the oxygen environment was richer. It's sustained, and they lived longer. Why? Because there's more oxygen in their environment. So the more oxygen that we can bring into our body, we may grow a bit bigger. I probably won't, but I don't know. However, you will live longer because you've got more of the stuff of life going in. So oxygen water can be bought online. There's an amazing company that I buy from called OxyPet, okay? And they'll just ship you the water, right? And now you can you don't have to do it every day, but if you do it maybe once or twice a week, then you're adding to the water and you're making the water more gold standard than whatever you do. Let me say this, whatever you do not give your pets tap water.
I was going to say that. Explain about that.
Okay, you don't have to go fancy to oxygen water or to hydrogen water or to structured water if that is, because there are costs involved with that. Okay, however, let's remember that cats are not drinking gallons of it. So from a pocket point of view, it's not a huge investment to make for a very profound gain. So I'm in favor of it if you can. However, you can buy I don't know, let's say it's a 30-pound filter, right, for your water. There are scales, obviously. You can pay £300 for a filter, but like some kind of filter, for the love of God, please do that for your cats, because not only are they tasting all of the nasties that are in tap water, so it becomes a less pleasurable experience for them and becomes then a deterrent. No, I don't want to drink the water. And what did we just say? We need to try and get them to take it and get it into them, right? So if it tastes nasty, they don't want to do it. So, but all of those things inside there, the microplastics, the heavy metals, the chlorine, the fluoride, the waste medical products, like the number of people, this is not quite so bad here in the UK as it is in the States, but the number of people on the pill and on antidepressants is astonishing, right? That goes into the water systems because we go the loo, it goes in the thing, and the filtration in the sewage plants can't get rid of these drugs. Okay, so there's estrogen dominance that's cropping up in every human, men included. This is one of the reasons why sperm counts have disappeared and that kind of, because the boys are getting so much waste product of the pill in their body from drinking tap water. But we're seeing it in amphibians, which are very sensitive to hormone disruptions, right? And we're seeing it in our pets as well. So there's an estrogen dominant, right? You've got to get that out. They don't want that. They don't need that. But all the toxins are in there, right? And so they have to come out of their body as well. And if you're not doing a detox protocol on a daily basis, or at least weekly, right, then that's all staying in there. Remember at the very start, I talked about the factory. The raw materials have to come in, the work happens, the thing goes out, and we've got a rubbish bin down the back here, right? The rubbish bin's got to get emptied, okay? Now, they do that, but they need help doing that to get rid of everything. Okay, so that's why we have a detox protocol as part of their routine to help clear that out properly and get rid of the toxins. So if you've got someone who's on tap water all their life, I guarantee you they've got stored toxins in their body that need help to be evicted from the body. Otherwise, they're going to sit there and cause the body to go into an imbalance, right? It's out of homeostasis where health exists, into an imbalance where you've got symptoms and ultimately disease. If we can clear out that trash, then we go back to being in balance. It's that simple. Like it'd be lovely to say, oh, it's so complicated. I'm really smart. And, you should. No, it's really, really simple. Take out the trash and then you won't get the rats. Keep the trash in. You're going to get the cockroaches and the rats, right? Do you want cockroaches? Right? So just, yeah. Anyway, so water, filter it, please.
I think this has got to be one of the best live ever that I've done that has covered so many different topics. We've talked about dead bodies, contraception, frogs, zebra. Like, I tell you, Penny, this is one of the best lives I've done. Oh my goodness. So we're literally just at time. So if anybody's got any questions, pop them in the chat, and if we can't get to them tonight, we will come back to you on them. So just to recap, everybody, like, you know, tap water is terrible for humans and for pets, right? If anything, like Penny said, please get a water filter if you don't do anything else. You know, if you even Google, you know, videos of tap water, you'll see the pipes that it goes through. As Penny said, as well as the filtration issues and things like that, it's terrible. So think about water with your cats. And to kind of, I don't even know if I can condense what we've talked about tonight. So I want you guys to think about, because I like to give people actionable things. You've given us so much information. The biggest takeaway for me has been that cats can taste, I didn't know this, always a school day, individual proteins. So I love the fact that that's really helpful in explaining their behavior response to plates of food. But as Penny said, you know, we can make nutrition really simple. And I know that we've covered a lot here tonight. So make sure you catch the replay, peeps, to capture, you know, the 4 types of supplements that cats need, the way that we can constitute the plate to help them as best we can, the tips and tricks about, you know, helping their teeth, getting those whole foods into them, those superfoods as well. I mean, crikey, I started writing things down halfway through because I was like, oh, I'm going to look at that. Oh, I'm going to investigate that, because we have spirulina here. Like, literally on, you know, for self-selection, they can use it as they wish. I hadn't heard of moringa leaf, and I'm going to look into chlorella, because I'm like, well, if that's 3 great things, I'm going to investigate those. So I hope that everybody that's been here has found the session useful. It's my foggy brain with my energy. Is there anything that you would like to say? It doesn't look like there's any questions. Is there anything you'd like to say in conclusion? And then after that, please feel free to share how people can find you and how they can work with you or get more information about you.
So I think that the big take home with this is, for, you know, I mean, we've just done an hour. It's a little bit of a whirlwind, but you've really had a bit of a grounding in nutrition. Like, it doesn't have to be complicated, long-winded, scientific, boring, heavy-handed, and a nightmare for you to then try and actually execute. There are some really simple foundational principles, and when you know what those are, then you can apply and play with that, play with what works for you and your circumstances and your house panthers to get the right combo, right? So don't let the thought of, oh my gosh, it's really complicated, or I tried this before and I failed, or be discouraged. Like, it doesn't have to be difficult. But you get so much bang for your buck when you make a change like this, because it will affect every part of their body. And what do you think? Oh, we just froze. What do you think, you know, is happening on a cellular level? Either every day you're getting healthier or every day you're getting sicker. So if you're putting in good quality food, every day you're getting healthier. Like, it's like a law of nature. Yeah. So I guess I just wanted to let people know that there really should be no barrier to get the result you want, which is your cats with you for longer, and along the way, we're talking about cutting vet bills and the stress of driving to the vet and all those kinds of nightmares that are, you know, that typically go with it. So there's a win-win-win kind of, you know, everybody stands to win when you can optimize. And Julianne, just like as you said at the beginning, raw species appropriate is the gold standard, but there's freeze-dried raw, there's fresh raw, there's lightly cooked, there's minimally processed, there's leftover scraps from your dinner table. There's lots of other things that sit on that continuum from the highly processed, super carcinogenic, totally rubbish, I wish it was never born kind of food, all the way up to your gold standard species appropriate raw. So it's not either or, there's a spectrum. And if you can move at least a notch or 2 in that direction, right, then you've done you and your cats a favor. Cats can be picky, as we've said. It sometimes takes a while to transition. Don't lose heart, okay? Yeah, I had one client who their cat took a year. Yeah. But we got there, okay? And it's worth it, because every day becomes a school day for the cat, because they're like, oh my gosh, food is different. I was starting to think like this cat just thinks life is a joke, and the more they can drag their paws and play around and pretend that they're being fussy, the longer they get to have this entire smorgasbord of flavors and options, right? I was like, I think he's pulling our leg here. I think he's absolutely fine with it, but he just wants to see what else we can deliver, high maintenance. What? So do persevere, because it is a game changer.
Yeah, definitely. I've just found 2 quick questions. Someone's asked about dried chicken necks. Do they work for collagen, or is that not the same because they're dried?
It will still work. Yeah, it just means that there's no moisture there, but the composition of the tissue itself is still there. So you might want to soak that to soften it down and plump it back up and make things a bit easier, or you might want to then just make sure that you are supplementing with water during that day, because what you don't want, and this is one of the big problems with kibble, not only is kibble dry, right, so that there's practically no moisture in it to feed the need, right? But second thing is, because it's dry, it then acts like a sponge. So it sits in the stomach or sticks in the digestive tract, and it's pulling water, it's stealing water from other places in the body to soften it down and digest and make it actually, digestible. So it's a water thief. And what we do, so if we're giving dry food, if you're doing freeze dried, okay, it's going to also be a water thief. It's high quality food now, but it's a water thief because it's going to require moisture to digest. And if the cat doesn't drink something at the same time, then they're going to pull that water from their cells and end up in a dehydrated state. And that's where we find chronic kidney disease comes from, is chronically, they're usually their entire life living at a dehydration state in the body, which means the kidneys are working really hard to extract and hold on to every bit that they possibly can in order to stay, plump on the inside, right? But the kidney's working, and the kidney's like, oh my gosh, I'm exhausted, I'm out, right? And now we've got kidney disease. So don't make the kidney work so hard by meaning that there's always low water. Lift the water, the kidney can go, oh, okay, cool, I've got a half day today, no worries, right? And it'll last longer.
Yeah, lovely. I think also with collagen, just something that I found, peeps, is when I've used bone broth before for me and then for the boys, you can rehydrate collagen. So it's not a question of when it's freeze dried or when it's dried, it's not like it doesn't work anymore. Because when I've made chicken bone broth and then you've make it a certain way, you can rehydrate it and it's like a jelly, so which has got more the collagen back in it. So like Penny said, if you're feeding anything freeze dried, great, but maybe see if you can give it a bit of moisture to just support the cat with that. The other question that I found was, do cats need digestive enzymes to support their food?
Sometimes. So if a cat is young and it has gone from being weaned, going from the milk onto a raw diet, then typically they're not going to have problems and deficiencies in it, right? And that should set them up for life. If when they were weaned they came onto highly processed food and then that's continued for a period of time, then there are automatically going to, as a result of that, going to be things in their body that are no longer optimized. Yes, they're working, but they're working at, let's say, 7 out of 10 instead of a 10 out of 10. So producing the right amount of enzymes might be where your kitty has a weakness. Remember, we said before, the same problem can cause thousands of different scenarios depending on where your cat has their inherent weakness. Okay, so you might find that digestive enzymes do become necessary for your cat because somewhere in their story that bit no longer works at the optimum level. Okay. Yeah, I could go too long with that. But I just want to pick up on the point that you made before. You asked me a question earlier, what's one of the best ways to get the collagen in the body? Bone broth. I should have said bone broth, because these little oily fish is great for the oils, and that's absolutely right. But when it comes to collagen, better than powder is bone broth by a considerable margin. And because you have, or somebody, you or the manufacturer, right, has made it from the bone, right, that's the original food source, the natural source, you're going to have many, I'm going to say all, but many of those collagen types within there. So it's a richer, fuller spectrum version of it that's gone through less adulteration, less processing to get to a powder, right, than to be in a bone broth. So big fan of bone broth.
Yeah, definitely. Brendan from Raw Pet Medics recommended it to me because they do. I can't remember the name of the company. I'll post it on my Instagram stories tomorrow. Downstairs in the cupboard, they do a powder. So we suggested about sprinkling it on their food as well as making it in the jelly and like you said before, like the juice. The drink for them. Anyway, so like you said, I've got many things going around in my brain we could share, but we are out of time, and I'm conscious I don't want to keep you any longer. Please tell everybody where they can connect with you if they wish to.
So you can find me at drzoolittle.co, just .co, or Instagram at Dr Zoolittle. So that's pretty straightforward. Those are the best places to find me. Both of those will also, the Instagram will have the link tree bio which got a bunch of resources and stuff up there, and on my website as well there are various gifts and resources that you can find as you go across the page there, so that's a good starting point. I do have a cat food guide, which is it's a bit more than a list, but I made a UK version specifically. So Julianne, I might share that with you, and then you can pop that out to share with everybody. So that's a free gift that you can then have my recommended brands that are UK based of the food that's going to meet that criteria. So I set the bar very high. It's a fairly short list, like it's not a cast of hundreds here. If I've missed one that you think that I should take a look at, then please do let me know, right? I'm always happy to include another one, but I'm very happy to share that, and that's got a bunch of other information to get you started. But you will also find I've written a number of books, guides on cat nutrition. So you could buy any one of those four. So the basic bowl, the supplementation, the superfoods and water. There's a book on each one of those things. So you can buy any one of those books if you want to for cat nutrition, or there's an offer to buy the bundle. Okay. And so I might share you, I'll tell you what, yes. So normally the bundle is about $80. I don't know what that is in pounds off the top of my head. But let's do a special deal of, if I'm going to stick with dollars just to work it out. So it'd be $32, which is, I don't know, 27 pounds, something like that. And you have all four. Yeah. You have all four books as a special package. Wow. So that's because we've talked about that a lot today. I know that you might want to get onto it. And these books just show you everything you need to know.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you. So give me the details for that. I think we did talk about that before, possibly doing that. So I'll see if I've got the information, and I will pop it in the description below for everybody so that they can capture that. Thank you so much, Penny. I mean, I know you and I, just like when we had our call before, we overran and we could talk about so many things. I am so grateful that you've been here. People are saying in the comments it's been really educational. They've loved to enjoy the discussion. So thank you so much. I'm going to wrap us up because I just know that we could keep going.
We really could.
Right? I'd love to have you back again if you would be open to it, to talk about cats again. But for this evening, I will wrap us up. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
Go forth and love your cats. Like, that's the most important thing, right? We do it for them at the end of the day because we love them, because they're worthy, right? No matter who they are, right? Any animal is worthy of the highest quality of life that we can provide them. So whatever you do that ticks that box for them, go forth and do it with my blessing. And thank you very much.
Love it. Brilliant. That's great. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for being here. It's lovely to see you in the comments and for you to enjoy to join in the chat with us. Thank you, Penny, Dr. Zoolittle, for being here and for sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us. And we will see you all very soon. Lots of love, everybody. Take care and bye for now. Bye.